Hello everybody, thank you for joining me. So we're going to be covering how to build a Bloom perspective. So originally this was going to be a live Twitch stream, but unfortunately the connection gods were against me and I had to call it a day. But as promised, we're back. This is an offline stream that I've put together. So unfortunately it's not going to be as interactive as I was hoping it was going to be, but that's not a problem. Please put any comments, so tweet me with any comments or questions that you have, and then we'll follow up in another session on Twitch hopefully, and we'll be able to answer those questions then. But for now, again, as previously aimed, this is something that you should be able to follow along. So if you want to build a Bloom perspective at the same time as I am, we are going to be building one from scratch, then please do join in. So you can access Bloom for free in Desktop now, so you can run Bloom off of a local database in Desktop. So if you're going to do that, do check that you've got the latest version of Desktop. That's 1.2.7. Don't worry if you're not sure how to do that. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So just as a quick comment, if you've got any questions you want to follow up in, then please do check out the Neo4j community. So that's community.neo4j.com. So there you'll find best practice guides about all things Neo4j. You can ask questions there, and absolutely, if there's some questions there you know the answer to, by all means get involved and help answer with those. So what are we going to cover today, or in this session? So I'm going to show you how to add Bloom. So actually it adds itself automatically, so I will show you that in a moment. So I'm going to show you how to check if you've got the latest version of Neo4j Desktop, and if not, how to get that sorted. And then what we're going to do is we're going to load some data, and I'm going to be using the built-in browser guide movie graph for that. So I'm going to use that nice handy bit of data there. And then we're going to build a Bloom perspective from scratch. So let's get going. So I've got here Neo4j Desktop. I've already set up my project, but I'm going to show you now how can you check what version of, or how to check if you've got the latest version of Neo4j Desktop. So what we'll do is we'll click on this picture here of a bell, the notification center, and if we click on that, it will let us know if we've got any updates for desktop available. So as you can see, I've got no updates available. Now something to check is you may accidentally be in offline mode in desktop. So if your internet starts doing some strange things, then what desktop will do is that it will switch you over to offline mode, just so that you have a bit more of a smoother user experience. So to check to see if you're inadvertently in offline mode, if you click on the settings cog here, and you'll notice we've got a section here which says offline mode. So if that box is ticked, just unclick it, and like that you'll have disabled offline mode. And again, once you've done that, go back to the notification center, maybe press the cog to see if anything comes up, and then if there's any updates available, you'll be notified about them. So that's how we can check. And if I click on the graph application section here, you'll see I've got Neo4j Bloom available. So that's packaged by default with Neo4j Desktop 1.2.7. Should you accidentally delete the app, don't worry, all you need to do is restart desktop and you'll notice it's back there again. So that's how we check to see if we've got the latest version of desktop, and we can see that Bloom is there. And again, as I said, you don't need a license key for Bloom in Bloom 1.3 in desktop 1.2.7. So as long as you're working with local graph in desktop, you'll be able to use Bloom. So let's start thinking about getting some data in. So I'm going to add a database to my project, clicking on the local graph, and I'm going to use an older version of Neo4j Desktop. Again, we'll have a follow-up session when we're using Bloom with version 4.0 of the database and how it would work with multi-database versions, but for now I'm going to stick with 3.5.15. I'll put in the password, and I'm going to create the database. So another thing I'm going to do as well is I'm going to be showing you some of the features we might want to add in perspective, and I'm going to be using one of the graph data science algorithms. So I'm just going to add that plugin as well now. Whilst I'm here, you can do the same as well. So just press on the plugins button and you'll notice you can add the library here. So I'm going to install that now. Good. So quick tour of Desktop 1.2.7. So for those of you who have been using Desktop, you may have noticed it's changed slightly. So you'll see that we no longer have the application section at the top. That's gone away. And what's happened is all the applications are launched from this open button. So when we get the database started, I'll show you that's working. And you will also notice we have this file section here. So whilst we're not going to be using it in this session today, what you can do with this is, for example, you can add a browser guide. So you can build browser guides. I did a session on that last week, showing you, from scratch. I've never built one before, but you can see how you can go about building a pretty simple browser guide using HTML, and then you can use the file section to launch that for you. But we're not going to be covering that today, but I just wanted to show you some of the changes in Desktop in case you were a bit unfamiliar with the new setup. So I'm going to start the database now, and then we are going to get started with creating the Bloom perspective. So we're just going to add some data. So I'm going to let that start. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the movie graph dataset. So that's really easy to get to. We're not downloading anything special. We're going to execute that from one of the built-in guides. We're going to put in a couple of indexes, and then we're going to be heading over to browser. So we've got that started up now. And what you will see is if I want to launch Neo4j browser, I just press the open button here. If I want to launch some of the other apps, so we'll be launching Bloom shortly, then you just click on the little down arrow and you'll have the various graph apps you've already got installed. So we've got Bloom here. So first off, let's get some data into our database. And I normally just navigate through the guide here. So I'm going to click on write code. I want to use the movie graph. I'm going to move to the next slide. And this is the data that I want. So just as a reminder, if you find anything in a hatched box like this, you can click on that and it will send the code up to the query bar. So I'm just going to run that now, and that's going to go away and generate the data for me like so. And I'm just going to quickly show you what the data model looks like. So call db.schema. And as you can see, we've got a movie node, we've got a person node, and we've got different ways that the person node interacts with the movie. So either active, reviewed, produced, wrote, or directed. And there's also person to person connection there. So we've got person follows person. So that's our data model. So I'm just going to add a couple of indexes in there to help Bloom along. So I'm going to create an index on person name. So the person node has a name and a date of birth. And a movie node's got a title, a tagline, and year released. So I'm just going to put an index on the person name and the movie title. So we're going to add those two indexes, so we are in business. So I'm going to put browser down for a moment, and we're going to launch Bloom. So I click on the little down arrow, press Bloom, and that's going to go and start up Bloom. And what's happening in the background when you start up Bloom is it's having a look at the database, and it's going to look at things like what labels and relationship types are in use. It'll also do some statistical analysis around the properties being used for the labels and the relationship types, and it will pick the common ones associated with the nodes and the relationship types. And it also will use the indexes that you set to help speed up navigation of the data. So this will make more sense in a moment. So first of all, we're going to create a perspective. We don't have any perspectives available. So if I press this button here, I'm given a couple of options. So I can either start with a completely blank perspective. So we'll be given a blank canvas and we can tailor it however we like. But more commonly, when I'm starting out with a Bloom perspective and I'm sort of updating it and so forth, what I'll do is I will use this generate perspective button. So I'm going to click that. And what's happening in the background is Bloom is going to pick some arbitrary colours for our node labels, as it's done here. We've got one for movie and person. And the other thing it does as well is it tries to guess what would be a sensible caption name for our nodes, which you'll see in the visualization shortly. So it will look for things like name, title, and so forth. And that's what it's going to suggest as captions for our visualization. So this will make more sense shortly. So what I'm going to do before I select this perspective is I'm going to give it a more sensible name. And we can do that by clicking on the three dots here, and then we can rename it. And I'm going to call it movie graph because that's the data that we're using. And I shall save that. And I'm going to use this perspective now. So this is our initial perspective. And if I start using some of the nodes, if I type in person as suggested, it's going to bring back all of the person nodes. And I can zoom in and have a look at those. So you know how I talked about Bloom tries to be helpful and suggest what might be useful caption names. So Bloom selected name from the person node. So this is what we're seeing now. And equally, if I clear the scene and let's do movie to bring back some movie nodes. Same idea. It's selected title and that's what's being displayed. So if I double click on a node, we get the information pane that comes up. We can see title, that's what's being shown as the caption. Now you might decide, well actually I don't just want title on there, maybe I want to include the release year as well. So what we can do to customize what we're showing for the captions and so forth is if we click on this button here, we can find out more about what's being selected. So I click on movie node, and what you notice, we've got two options here. So we'll list out all of the common properties associated with that node label, and you can see here that title's been selected for caption, so that's what's going to be shown on the node when we select it. So for example, if I click on released and just close this back, you now see that we also include the release year on there as well. And for argument's sake, if we said actually there's certain properties we don't want to be displayed, we can choose to exclude those. So if I decided that I wanted to exclude the tagline, if I click on the tagline and exclude that, if I then go back to the information pane, you'll notice that the tagline is no longer shown here. So you can use this here to customize what information you want to show to your end users. So I want to show the tagline, so I shall remove that. So you can see what's going on here, and you've got the person label there as well. So you'll notice you've got an option here that says add new category, and I'll click on that, and there's no more labels in the database, we've only got two. But if you selected the blank perspective option, then these won't have been populated, and any labels that haven't already been shown up as categories, you could then select them and customize it. So what you can do as well, for example, is maybe you want to get rid of the movie category, so you could delete that category, confirm and delete, and then you'd only have person labels, and then everything else that wasn't selected here would come back as an other node. But we quite like to have movies here, so I'm just going to put that back in. So if I select movie, there it is, but it's back in the category. So you can see how you can customize that there. And you can do the same for relationships as well. So you can decide which relationships you may want to have available, so either visible or hidden. So you can have customization around that. Search we'll come back to in a moment. So we have this option to customize what captions we want to use. Do we want to hide any properties away? Another thing we can do as well is customize what colors we have for the node. So Bloom can pick those arbitrarily for us when we generate the perspective, but we can change them if we don't like them. And another thing we can do as well is we can put some icons. We can associate icons with our nodes. So when we're zoomed out and maybe it's difficult to see the captions or the text is too small to show the caption, there's a lot of value in being able to have some kind of graphical representation with that node. So people don't always want to look up the colour associated with that label, and maybe it makes more sense to pick some kind of an image that is more related to that topic. So we're going to do that now. So if you click here on the sort of node section here, and you click on this sort of square, this gives you the option to do that. So I'm going to have a look at something for movie. So I'm going to put in movie and see what images are available, and let's say I'm going to pick this play button to represent movie. And we can do the same for person as well, so I'm going to click on that square, I'm going to put in person, and I'm going to have a look at what icons I can choose from. And as you can see, there's lots and lots of icons. I like the look of, what do I like the look of? I'm going to go for this one. Is this sort of like a person with a movie camera? Okay, why not? So I'm going to pick that icon for the person. So what you can see, if I zoom out, you can start to see those icons. So if I clear the scene and I do something like, I want to see what movies Tom Hanks has acted in. So I've put the indexes in, and because I've got the indexes in, Bloom uses those, so I don't have to do match P person name Tom Hanks acted in movie. I can just write Tom Hanks. And because Bloom is this near natural language search when we're working through the database, I can do something like Tom Hanks acted in movie. And then Bloom will try and resolve that into what we're looking for. So in this example, it's turned it into this pattern. I'm going to select that. And you can see we've got our nice icons here. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can tell from a distance straight away that these are going to be movie icons and this is my person icon. So that's pretty straightforward. And another thing we can do now, and this is a new feature in sort of the newer versions of Bloom, what we can do as well as adjusting the colours for the nodes, we can do that for the relationships as well. So I'm going to quickly associate some colours with the relationships, and the reason why I think this is really good, especially if you haven't got a large number of relationship types, by associating them with a colour, we can very easily visually differentiate any groups or any interesting behaviour going on, so it's really handy for visual inspection. So I'm going to go and quickly pick some arbitrary colours for these various relationship types. And let's pick this colour here. So we can do this, and if I just quickly bring in some of these other relationship types, so I'm going to put in directed, that'll bring back some examples of that. I'm going to put in follows, reduced, reviewed, and wrote. You can see now by having the different colours, it's a lot easier to sort of scan and see what's going on with our graph. So there we go. So we've done some basic customization of our graph. We've picked what captions we want to show. We've picked what properties, if any we want to hide away. So hiding the property is really useful if we've got some sort of unsightly long, unique identifying number as an example. So we've customised what we're showing. We've adjusted the colours for our nodes if required, and we've also put colours to our relationship types. So straight away we've done a lot to make this quite user friendly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you something around search phrases. So there's a lot of power in Bloom with what you can do to explore your data, and there's a lot of patterns you can use, these Bloom phrases you can use to explore your data. But sometimes you may need a very specific query, and this specific query you run over and over again, and maybe you can't write it in Bloom, or it's something that you write regularly and you want to have something that encapsulates that query without having to put that phrase in over and over again. And what we can do is we can use these things called search phrases in Bloom. So remember we had this search section here. So this is what we can do, and this allows us to add a cipher query. We can parameterize that cipher query, so we can say what we want to put in for the user, and we can give it a nice friendly name that a user can call. So I'm going to add a search phrase, and a search phrase that I always add in Bloom when I'm starting and I'm creating a perspective is something to show me what my data model looks like. Because I will know my domain, but sometimes I need a reminder, and I don't want to keep shifting back and forth between browser and Bloom to be able to see what my data model is. So it's a very clever way we can do this. And I'm just going to show you my Cypher query here. So what I can do, so remember we've got calldb.schema, so that's what we normally call in browsers to have a look at our model. And what we can do is we can yield the nodes and relationships that come back. So that's what I'm doing. I then unwind them because these are collections, so I'm unwinding the collections back into their components, and then I'm going to return those, and that's going to give me my data model. So I'm going to call that call schema. I'm going to give it description, and I can save this. So this is the phrase that I'm going to use to call my search phrase. So what I can do now is if I do call schema, oops, press the wrong button there. Do call schema, and you can see it shows here that it says it's a search phrase. So if I press this, it gives a little description of what it does, and there we go. We can now have a look at my data model, and this should look familiar. This is what we saw previously when we called it in browser. So that's an example of a search phrase, and we can have a look at this. So something to bear in mind, which is really powerful as well, is for those of you who are using APOC, especially if you're using things like virtual relationships and nodes, you can use that as an aggregation layer through the search phrases in Bloom. So that can be extraordinarily powerful in certain use cases. So you can use that, and my colleague Will Line has put a blog post on how he's used the virtual relationship and nodes in Bloom. So this is an example of a search phrase. So let's have a look at something else for a search phrase. And I'm going to use some parameters now. For those of you who are familiar with the movie graph guide, one of the queries we have in there is when we're looking for movies that have been released from a certain period of time. So what I've done is I've taken that query here. So this specific query here basically asks for all the movies from the 90s. So this is all of the movies after 1990 and before 2000. Now, perhaps a more useful query to us would be if we provide 2 years, and then the query is going to give us all of the movie titles that fall within those 2 years. So I'm going to adapt this query slightly. So I'm going to say years. So all the movies coming back from certain years. So just give this a sensible name. So we're going to give this, we've got to think about what search phrase do we want users to use to call this. So let's say movies between year 1 and year 2. So here, if the user who's using Bloom puts in this search phrase of, actually let's make small m, movies between, they give 1 year for this parameter, 1 year for this parameter, they'll be able to run that query and get back all the movies of that time. So something to bear in mind with Bloom is we don't return tables, so I'm just going to return the nodes, return the movies that meet that year. So what I'm going to do now is put in a reference to our parameters. So it's going to be year 1, and I'm going to put the other one here. And then we just need to let Bloom know a couple of things. So we need to let Bloom know that these are integers. And what we can do as well is we can suggest inputs based on labels. So Bloom will pick certain things. So for example, if we were looking for certain actors' names, we could suggest, we'll look at person names, and you can auto-populate that. Now, because we're using an integer, I'm not going to bother with that, but the next search phrase we create, I will use those. So we'll see how that gets used. And the thing to bear in mind as well, so not only can you do it from what you've already got available in the data, but you can also create a Cypher query as well to try and generate that output. So that's extraordinarily powerful. So let's just tell that the second parameter is also an integer. We're going to save that. Oh, I forgot to give it a sensible name, so let's just quickly do that now. Excellent, let's save this, and then again I'll show you this in action. So if we do between, let's say, 1985 and 1995, why not? And then we can run this query and it's going to bring back all of the movies that meet that requirement. And that's really powerful, especially if there's a certain query that you're going to run over and over again. Then this is a great way of being able to do that without having to have any sort of verbose query behind it. So let's do a quick example where we're using name and suggesting potential inputs. So I'm going to clear the scene. So what I'm going to do now is do the bacon number equivalent. So again, I've copied that from the movie guide. Let's search phrase hops from person. No, sorry, be consistent and doing it all lowercase. Hops from person to movies and other people. So I'm going to paste in the query, so we're just going to adjust that slightly. So we can keep calling it bacon, why not? And then the name here is going to be our parameter. And then what we're going to do now is, we know it's a string, so we're leaving that at that, and then I'm going to make a suggestion. So I'm going to say we're going to suggest a person name. I'm going to save that. So now if we run this, so hops from, and let's say Tom Hanks, and you can see it's suggesting various names we might want to put in. So I'm going to pick Tom Hanks, and there we go. So we've now expanded our bacon number functionality. So we don't have any relationships here. So you do need to specifically state that you want to return the relationship. So I'm just going to quickly update that search phrase. And I'm going to just give a variable R. And then what I can do is return distinct Hollywood, R, and bacon. Let's save this. So if I now rerun the same query, let's try to clear the scene and try again. Okay, I'll have to look into what's going on there. It's probably that's probably my bad somewhere, so I just need to see what's going on there. But anyway, you get the idea. What we can do is create. We can create these search phrases, which are really powerful in being able to capture something that we're going to repeat over and over again, and maybe we're adjusting the parameters that we put through. So that's really powerful. Now, another thing you can do as well is you can, I'm just going to clear the scene here quickly, and let's just pick an arbitrary Tom Hanks directed. So let's just pick something that Tom Hanks has directed, nice and small. And what you can do as well is we can also adjust the size of the nodes and the thickness of the relationships. And there's a couple of ways we can do this. So what we might decide to do is we want to adjust the default size. So maybe we want to have person nodes always bigger than movie nodes. So we can do that. But another thing we can do as well is we can do rule-based adjustments. So we can add a rule-based styling, and we can do this based on a property, for example. Now, what I'm going to show you, and this is why we brought in the Graph Data Science library, is I'm going to adjust the thickness of, I'm going to adjust the size of the node, but I'm going to do it based on PageRank. So I'm going to run PageRank on all of the actors in my small data set. And then I'm going to add a property to each person node, and it's going to have a PageRank value. And then what I want to do is I'm going to change the size of the nodes based on their PageRank score. So this is going to be a rule-based adjustment. So I'm going to go back to browser now, and I'm going to make this happen. So back in browser, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run PageRank. So the first thing I'm going to do, and don't worry too much if you're not sure what's happening here, but I'm using the Graph Data Science library. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in and shape the data that I want to run PageRank on. So what I'm doing here is I'm giving my in-memory graph a name of centrality. I'm saying that I want to match all of the person nodes in my database. And then what I'm saying here, so this is PageRank. I'm doing this on everybody connected rather than actors. So I'm just going to change that slightly because I want to do acted in. So I'm just going to quickly update this. And we know that in this scenario here, everything goes to movie. So I've been lazy and not put in the movie node. Excellent, so I've put acted in. So what this is going to do, this is going to go off, pull all my person nodes, and then it's going to go, and the connections that we're interested in is person acted in movie, acted into another person. So that's how we're mapping them together, and then we return those IDs. Don't worry too much about the terminology here. This is just, I'm just basically saying how I want to shape my graph. So I'm going to put that into memory. And then I am now going to run PageRank. So I'm using all of the default values. So I'm not setting any specific properties for the PageRank algorithm here. So all I'm doing here is I'm saying run PageRank on my centrality graph. So that's the graph we just put in memory. And I want you to create a new property called PageRank and all of those person nodes that we're going to run PageRank on. And you're going to put the value of their PageRank into that property. So I'm going to run that. And I can show you now when I list back person. So I'm going to match all the person nodes and bring back their name and their PageRank value. And I'm going to order it by the nodes with the highest value for PageRank. You can see Tom Hanks here is 4.8. And if I scroll down sort of to the bottom, we have low values of 0.15 for James Thompson, Paul Blythe. I think some of these are reviewers, so they're not very well linked. So you can see what's going on there. So if I now set a dynamic property, what I want the likes of Tom Hanks to have a very large node, and I'd like the likes of Helen Hunt should have a smaller node. So then obviously we go down the list, there'll be some small nodes. So let's have a go at setting that dynamic property. I will go to nodes, I'm going to select person now, and now we've added that property, I'm going to do add rule-based styling. I'm going to, actually let me just refresh the data because this would be from the previous query. There we go, so now if I do this, hopefully it should show. So rule-based, I want, just going to restart Bloom, just in case. Okay, so if I click on person and I want a rule-based style, and I want to do it on PageRank. So what I can do as well, I'm going to select range. Oh, I want to do size. I want to do range. And what I'm going to say is that the min point, so the min point was about 0.05, so I'm going to do 0.15. And we're going to say it's, let's pick quite a small node, why not? And Tom Hanks was about 4 point something, so let's say the max point is 5, and we're going to go for a really big node. So we've set the rule-based one now, so what we can do now is if I try person, we should have a nice selection of different sized nodes. Okay, let's just see what I've done here. Oh, sorry, and yes, select size flag. So there we go. So we can see now, if I zoom out, we've managed to do this dynamic sizing based on a rule. So our rule here has been a property. So this is extraordinarily powerful, and you can think we can do this as well for the thickness of relationships. We can adjust the colours as well. So let's have a go at doing this with colours. And this is an extraordinarily powerful way of being able to. So I'm going to take the size off, and let's do this with colour. So you can say min point is 0.15 and the max point was 5, and let's say the midpoint here is going to be 2. So again, the same idea, we can adjust. Let's put this over here. Excellent. So it's the same idea as well. So you can see the power of how we can customize the nodes, we can apply rules as well. So you've got this really powerful dynamic thing, and this is really useful if you've got some kind of results and you want to do some visual inspection, how you can weight both by size and by color. And as I was saying, you can do the same thing with relationships as well. So it's the same idea, you can add some rule-based things on that. Okay, we've given you a good tour of what you can do with regards to getting up and running with a Bloom perspective. If you've got any questions, so either send a reply onto the Twitter thread when I post a link to this video on there. You can again post any questions in the community site, so that's community.neo4j.com. And if you've got any follow-up things you want to cover in a Twitch stream, then please let me know and we'll get those covered. So thank you very much.